Before science, every ancient civilization looked at the world, the sky, the storms, the stars, and came up with their own reasons for them. Those reasons became mythology. But the question is, how did they all come up with a different reason? Well, here are explanations for 5 mythologies. Greek mythology. Greek mythology is a huge collection of legendary stories shaped over centuries through tradition, poetry, and even ritual. These myths were born from people trying to make sense of a world that did not always make sense. Why does the sun move across the sky? Why do we suffer? Why do the good die young and the wicked live long? The answers they came back with literally made and ascended the Olympian gods on to Mount Olympus. However, the story does not end with gods. Heroes such as Hercules, whose 12 labors came to represent human struggle and tenacity, and Achilles, whose skill and sad end in the Trojan War demonstrated just how thin the line is between heroism and mortality. Then there are the creatures, the Hydra with several heads, and the crafty Minotaur. Every one of them adds another level of excitement and dread to a world that never runs out of either. These stories explored the origins of the world and nature, the lives of gods and heroes, and the significance of the ancient Greeks. In addition to their presence in Greek literature, gods, heroes, and mythic events were frequently depicted in ancient vase paintings, votive gifts, and many other objects. But the Greeks were not the only civilization shaping mythic traditions. Another powerful culture built its own legendary stories right beside them. Roman mythology. Roman mythology grew from the religious and cultural traditions of ancient Rome, where stories of gods like Jupiter and Mars were shaped alongside the empire's rise, preserved through rituals, storytelling, and later woven into literature and art. What makes Roman mythology interesting is where it came from. Roman mythology shared roots with what scholars call Proto-Indo-European mythology and is influenced by the mythology of the Italic peoples. For context, Proto-Indo-European, or PIE, is the prehistoric grandparent language that eventually evolved into hundreds of modern languages spoken today across Europe, Iran, and northern India. Rome also borrowed heavily and deliberately from Greece. For example, Jupiter carrying the authority of Zeus, Mars, a more disciplined and honored counterpart to Ares, and Juno standing in the place of Hera. However, there seems to be a sharp contrast between Roman myths, which primarily emphasized order and civic duty, unlike the harsher and more fatalistic myths of Northern Europe. Norse mythology. Norse, Nordic, or Scandinavian mythology originated from the Old Norse religion and was later preserved in texts and passed down as folklore after Scandinavia's Christianization. What sets Norse mythology apart from almost every other tradition is its emotional honesty. Norse mythology leans into a darker, more intense world where even the gods are marked by struggle, fate, and inevitable doom. Constantly entangled with beings like the Jotnar, sometimes allies, sometimes enemies, sometimes something far more complicated. And over all of it hangs Ragnarok, which is considered the end of the world, not a possibility, but a certainty. The gods know it is coming, but they cannot stop it, and they fight anyway. From the icy north, we now travel to the deserts of Africa, where another ancient civilization explained the universe through powerful gods and stories carved into stone. Now, if you find this video interesting and educational, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so that you can keep getting interesting content just like this. Now, let's get back to the video. Egyptian mythology. Egyptian mythology is unique in the way that it explains key aspects of ancient Egyptian religion. While many civilizations saw time as a straight path, the Egyptians experienced it as a repeating cycle, shaped by the rising and setting of the sun and the flooding of the Nile. This belief gave rise to powerful myths like Ra's daily journey across the sky, only to descend into the underworld each night and be reborn at dawn. And the story of Osiris, whose death and resurrection mirrored the endless cycle of life, death, and renewal. Underneath all of that sits Ma'at, the principle of truth, balance, and cosmic order, the invisible structure that keeps the universe from collapsing into chaos. Egyptian myths were not just told for entertainment, they were acts of maintenance. These myths often changed depending on the version, but they were usually symbolic, ways for people to understand the gods and the world around them. The grand pyramids and temple complexes were built as permanent monuments to that belief, a civilization that saw the divine not as distant but as present in every aspect of life. But let's move on and shift our attention to Chinese mythology. Chinese mythology. Chinese mythology is not one unified tradition. It is a wide, living system shaped by local stories, imperial history, Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism, all flowing together into something vast and impossible to hold in a single glance. At its cosmic beginning stands Pangu, who separated sky from earth out of primordial chaos, holding them apart with his own body until they were stable enough to exist without him. Creation here is not a gift, it comes from sacrifice. However, Nuwa shaped humanity from day and repaired the cracked sky with her own hands when it threatened to fall. Hao Yi shot down 9 of the 10 suns, scorching the earth, restoring balance through precision and courage. Order in the heavens is maintained by the Jade Emperor, who governs heaven with an authority that mirrors the imperial courts below, a deliberate reflection of the Confucian belief that proper order above creates proper order below. Guanyin, a figure of compassion often worshipped as a goddess of mercy, answers anyone who calls on her, one of the most beloved figures across all of East Asian culture. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, is something altogether different. Mischievous, powerful, impossible to contain, his quest for immortality detailed across the epic journey to the west became one of the most enduring stories in all of Chinese literature. Some myths focus on cultural heroes who didn't just rule, but also taught people how to build houses, how to cook, and how to write. In Chinese mythology, civilization itself is a divine gift passed down from beings who cared whether humanity survived. Which mythology stood out to you the most? Leave a comment below and subscribe.